Good evening. Today I want to address the proposed marijuana legislation and recreational marijuana. I've read the recent bill and I've had consultations with the government, and I believe I differ from the government's position when it comes to the marijuana bill. Let me give some background as to how I arrived at my conclusions. First of all, I have extensive knowledge from the days I was on the streets to working with a number of young men over years, to analyzing what has happened to friends. So I have a very extensive background and knowledge base when it comes to marijuana from all sides, from either side of the law, as a pastor, and so on. And my conclusion is that marijuana, as we know, is a psychotropic drug. It is a mind-altering substance. And whereas a number of persons may enjoy it in the same way they would alcohol, there are inherent dangers that we have to be aware of. And when we think about implementing laws, the laws should benefit the country. So here are my issues with the marijuana law, and then I will present my feelings about it and what I think would be appropriate. The first issue that I'm going to deal with when it comes to marijuana law is that I began to do some research. I spoke with the president of the Medical Association. I got information from the Pharmaceutical Association, and to my surprise, the former president of the Medical Association indicated to me that there is no demand for medical marijuana. I was shocked because I was under the impression that there was a burgeoning demand and it was something that was absolutely necessary. The former president also indicated to me that whereas there are drugs that are marijuana-based, to date, according to his research and findings and work in the field, the non-marijuana-based drugs are more effective. So if there's no demand for medical marijuana, no significant demand for medical marijuana, then why are we pushing a legislation for medical marijuana? Now, let me say this. I have no objection to medical marijuana because marijuana is a pill. It's a medicine. It can be a medicine like any other medicine. You have morphine that comes from the same plant, I believe, that heroin is derived from. So it's in its proper use, it can be beneficial. So I have no issue with medical marijuana. However, the issue that I have is making marijuana more readily available by allowing it to be grown in the Bahamas, making it more accessible. One of the problems that we have today when it comes to marijuana, period, is that marijuana causes psychosis. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it's a fact that it causes psychosis. I have experiential knowledge from this. In the community that I lived in, we had maybe about 100 young men who were in the area, and 5 that I know of suffered from marijuana-related psychosis. I didn't even understand what it was at the time. We used to laugh and we used to say, okay, this person has a light head. But it was only until I talked to a psychologist and a psychiatrist many years later, and he said, that's called marijuana-induced psychosis. This is compounded today with a situation where we have synthetic marijuana. So normal or natural marijuana has certain issues, and then synthetic marijuana complicates it, because what happens is that, according to psychiatrists here from the Sandlands Rehabilitation Center, according to some of the specialists in the field of drug rehabilitation, I have been reliably informed that the synthetic marijuana produces a higher level of psychosis and is very unpredictable in terms of how it impacts individuals. So persons have had, real serious hallucinations, have committed acts under the influence of the synthetic marijuana. It's known in the Bahamas, I've been informed, as foreign. And so this is a type of drug that, it complicates the situation. And I think we have to be careful, whereas I don't have a problem with medical marijuana being implemented in the form of pharmaceuticals, so in a pill form, in a form that can be regulated. The pharmacists and the doctors that I spoke with, they have all said something similar. They have said that loose leaf marijuana is hard to dose effectively and hard to regulate, and therefore it's not real medicine, and it's open for abuse. And so I think we have to be careful that when we talk about medical marijuana, that we ensure that we are addressing it in the right way. When it comes to marijuana in terms of decriminalization, again, I am not against decriminalization for small amounts, because I realize the damage that can be done for locking someone up and putting someone in prison for a half bag of marijuana, or a joint, or a small amount. However, I do believe that penalties should remain in some forms. So, for example, if somebody is caught with marijuana, that they should be made to go through some type of education program. And this is helpful, because many times persons who are on the streets, who are involved in drugs, they've never been even educated about what the drugs do. I remember I was in a school one day, and I was talking to the young man, and I asked them a simple question. I said, "Can you tell me what happens when you smoke marijuana?" And they were arguing amongst themselves. And I said, "What's one of the visible signs?" And finally, one of the young men says, "Your eyes start to close." So I said, "Why do your eyes start to close? Why do your eyes look squinted and red?" He couldn't tell me. And I explained. I said, "Okay, the reason that happens is because when you smoke marijuana, it is a depressant, and it's designed to put you to sleep. And that's why your eyes start to close. When you stay awake, when you smoke marijuana, then what happens is you strain to stay awake." And when I explained that to him, they were amazed. But sometimes we don't even know the simple facts about marijuana. So it's very important to be educated. It's very important to understand the impacts of marijuana. And there are a number of studies that are out right now. And I'm going to reference some of those studies. There are a number of studies that indicate that marijuana is more harmful than previously imagined. So, whereas we don't want to criminalize persons for small use of marijuana, we also want to be careful that we maintain deterrence and recognize that it is a dangerous drug, especially to young people. Studies have indicated that persons in their teenage years, marijuana is much more harmful, and they are susceptible to long-term brain damage because of marijuana use. So we have to be very careful about that. So in conclusion, I'm not against medical marijuana, but if we allow the farming of marijuana in the Bahamas for any purpose, I believe it's going to end up on the streets, and I believe it's going to cause a proliferation. So we have to be very careful about the legislation and ensure that certain controls are in place.